Hi, Mike Vizard with Small World Big Data, and I'm excited to be here today talking about backup and data protection, particularly how do you get it when the world is getting so complex. We have data everywhere, we have more devices, we have more corners, and you know what? Everyone's saying we're modernizing and going to the cloud, but I think we're just adding that on as one more thing we got to do for most people. So you've got a lot of things to try to cover. Stay tuned and we'll find out how to do that. And I'm here talking with the CEO of CyberFortress, Bret Piatt. CyberFortress has got a portfolio of solutions, but more importantly, they've wrapped it with all sorts of best practices and services into a leading solution that you can either buy direct or get through your favorite MSP in a lot of cases. So without going too much more into that, Bret, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Looking forward to having our chat today.
You've got a long history with security and data protection and backup. You're a storage guy going way back. You're involved in phone companies and all sorts of interesting things. So just give us a little thumbnail about how you got to be running CyberFortress.
Sounds good. Well, I'll go all the way back, Mike. So started with a Commodore 64, and I started losing save game files back as a kid. Our games weren't saved in the cloud back at that point in time. And so you had that disk get corrupted, hours and hours of gameplay could get lost. So I learned as a young child the importance of saving that save file on multiple floppy disks and keeping them in different places. So going through to my professional career, I've worked as a network and security engineer and a product leader across the internet, from working in the Bay Area during the first internet boom all the way through till now, where I'm in San Antonio, Texas, Cyber City, USA. So we're pretty serious about cybersecurity down here. And in my journey, spent time in that business continuity and risk planning. And really, the backup is that one thing in your overall cybersecurity strategy that should be bulletproof. If you work through and you've got that data inventory, you've got the right plan, you've tested it, this should be the thing that you can count on when all the other stuff fails. But it still sucks restoring from a backup.
Right. So there are a lot of different players in the data protection backup space, data recovery space. A lot of them are offering cloud service hostings. Let's talk a little bit about what do you have to have in your holster? What do you have to have technology-wise first? And we'll talk about some of the things we wrap around that to cover the myriad of things people are trying to protect today.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the spread of employees all over with COVID and the global shutdown and everyone working from home, there's no more where maybe you had a policy to store everything on a file server in the office. That's not the case anymore now. It's stored either on a cloud service or it's on an employee laptop. So you look at a lot of that, just employee work product data is scattered in all sorts of places now. And there may be a copy saved in a file server and a copy on a laptop and a copy somewhere in the cloud. But do you have a separate backup of it? Are you keeping an archive of all these things? And really, do you even have that just data map and inventory to know where it's at to begin with? You get into the application side of things. The data used to be on our CRM software that we installed on a server that was in our office or a colo or one of our own data centers, depends how big your company was. But I mean, now you've got folks storing, even big global enterprises, their data is in salesforce.com. And how do you have a backup of that? Because you can't back up the server. You're not backing up the VM. So as we start to consume these new modern applications, it's really changing the way you have to think about data backup and recovery. Similar, like if that big SaaS application is offline, your recovery plan can't be put the data back into the application and run it again. If Salesforce is down, it's down. Hopefully they're going to get it fixed, but while they're down, what are you going to do to continue keeping your business going?
All right, so I think the answer, as we've introduced, is CyberFortress. That's what we want to talk about today a little bit more. So, and it's not simply a bucket of technology, right? Well, maybe you should explain it. CyberFortress, how should we think about CyberFortress?
So it's people and with process and a portfolio of products. So you've got to have folks that are experts in this and mapping out data, understanding the risk, understanding which things need to be recovered immediately, which need to be recovered over time. How often do you need to have those recovery points? Because if you made every application inside of your business a real-time global multi-site DR failover, someone who can sell you that, I'd love to sell you that for everything. But you probably don't need that for your tax records or a lot of things inside your business, and you wouldn't want to pay for it for everything. So you need that team of people, and then you've got to have the process behind that to go through the applications to determine those. And then at the end of the day, you've got to be able to have that team in the time of the emergency where you are declaring a disaster, and you've got to handle the recovery. And if you're an enterprise with a major data center outage, even if you have your own data backup and recovery team in your IT department, that team is going to be drowning at that point in time. And having a recovery partner that can come in and experiences this on a daily basis with different customers that can help you go through the steps you need to get the critical systems back online in first, and then work through the rest of the systems after that, is from our view, kind of essential in the world that we're in right now. Backups are getting restored from more frequently than ever, due to ransomware and due to this proliferation of where data is now stored. I'm certain that our customers have had cats spill coffee on laptops all throughout the pandemic, and those laptops have needed to be recovered after that, or those employees have lost days or weeks of work.
Yeah, I've not had a cat here walking on my keyboard, but we might talk about dogs chewing on things, right? And, and to see where they get to, or even more likely squirrels in the walls, getting mice in the walls. I've definitely had that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things you've seen people get into trouble with if they're trying to do it themselves, right? They run into this issue of maybe not covering every corner of their environment. They run into the idea, as you said, of not really having the staffing in a recovery situation, even though they have some of the knowledge. What are some of the things you see as really the bigger problems?
Yeah, so I'll use kind of a mid-market kind of customer size example. So this is a business that has an IT manager, and that person's responsible for everything from the data backup and recovery plans all the way through to upgrading the manufacturing control system for the automated manufacturing inside of their facility. And they're running the financial systems for the company, and they're taking care of all of those things. So they don't necessarily have the time to be able to keep up with all of the latest and greatest backup and recovery trends and tools and options. So they'll, in that kind of case, they may be making assumptions in certain areas as they adopt a new product or get a new vendor in. One that we commonly see out in the market is people move from a Microsoft Exchange server that they were running themselves to Microsoft 365, and they used to have that backup copy for legal discovery or all those things of their email. And now they're on Microsoft 365, and they're like, well, don't we have a backup there? No, Microsoft's doing a great job of running a reliable service. But if you just have the default Microsoft 365 offering, you don't have a second separate copy of that under separate custody from a different account. So, and if you don't have that, you don't have the backup, and you could be in a spot where you end up losing all of your email in your business.
Right. So just to be clear, you've got solutions for backing up SaaS solutions. You've got probably some technologies for backing up on-center stuff. What are some of the range of solutions you can bring to somebody?
Yeah, so this is one of our marketing tagline pieces, just mobile to mainframe, because businesses, if you had been around long enough to have a mainframe, that mainframe's still running strong. I was having lunch today and talking with somebody who was at IBM for the last few years. And it's this kind of running joke of what's the best-selling year for the mainframe in history. And usually it's always just last year, the year before. So as much as everyone says the mainframe is dying, IBM is selling more of those and making more money. I don't know if it's the Z12 or the Z13. I'm a CEO these days, but I know they're releasing new Z series all the time and making more money from it now than ever. But every business also got data on these things, these mobile devices I've got up here on the screen. Every company's got data out on them, whether it's folks at a construction site taking pictures of work progress, or it's a realtor taking photos for their listing. All of those things, every business has got data scattered across all of those things now. And depending on the criticality of it to the business, you need to have a backup strategy in place.
All right. And obviously there are other people out there saying, hey, we provide backup, we'll do backup, we'll put all our data in the cloud. How do you talk to end users about how those like point products or platform specific products might address what they're facing versus what you can bring by bringing that whole CyberFortress solution to bear on their problem.
Yeah, and so this is one where there isn't one product to solve every backup use case. I mean, you might be able to try to use some product out there like a hammer and hammer everything with it, but there may be, if you have systems, let's say you're in an engineering environment again, and maybe there's some software that runs on Windows 95. And then you have some other software that runs on an IBM AS400. And on that Windows 95 computer, it's barely able to keep going because you can't even buy hardware today that will run that. But you need to keep that up for that specific application. You need to have a backup. So in that case, you need an agentless backup solution that can log into that machine, pull the data out, do the backup work that it needs, but not run in the background all the time. Whereas like maybe on that AS400 system, you've got a CRM and a billing and a real-time records happening there, and you need an agent on that machine monitoring every time a file changes so that you can grab every little incremental change. So as you talk through the different pieces of data, how it's used in the application, and what the business can or cannot afford to lose, you really want to have a portfolio of solutions rather than one way to do it all. You look at one of the, we're a multi-time Veeam Partner of the Year. You've got a VMware environment. I think you should be looking at Veeam for your backup and DR, especially if you want to do something complex.
All right, so a whole portfolio of products. I mean, we should probably be thinking of CyberFortress not so much as any particular set of products as people who have a sweet spot in backup and DR and custom fitting that solution to us, but not custom in a way of one-offs, but customized in the way of hand-holding it, making sure it fits what we need, tailoring it, I guess you might say. Yeah. Is CyberFortress then something where the data is stored in CyberFortress, or is it stored on my premises? What's the target for my data?
Yeah, so we are predominantly keeping that safe, separate, offsite copy of your data.
Okay.
In the event where folks need to be able to do rapid recovery, we have a turbo recovery appliance that we can be deployed out on premise in certain environments, and that makes sense. This is back to that whole thing. There's not one way to do all of this, but we'd certainly simplify that offsite secured copy. And we've got data centers that are more than 100 feet underground. We have data centers in multiple jurisdictions and geographies. So you can handle the regulatory pieces. You can handle keeping the data separate if you are operating in a state like Florida, where you can have a hurricane come through. Even if you have two geographically separated data centers yourself in the state of Florida, that last hurricane that just went through the season, I think the thing was 250 miles wide. Best practices in the DR separation world is 42 kilometers or 42 miles, depends on who you want to argue with on that, on between data centers. That hurricane was wide enough to wipe out both of those.
Right. And in Florida, you don't know whether to be 100 feet underground and get swamped or 100 feet up in the air and get blown away, right? So there's another issue there that we want to make sure that we've got data somewhere outside of Florida probably is where we need to go. Sorry about that, Floridians. Tell me a little bit then, just quickly, how should people think about backup and disaster recovery as a service? Is this something that people should be going to outsourcing this or getting a service provider to do it for them? Is it a trustworthy thing to do? How do people trust you on that? How do you tell people, like, don't try to do this yourself. We're the experts in it.
So I think the biggest thing I think about from a risk perspective is you should have a separate vendor or partner or platform, however you want to assemble the pieces yourself, but you should have it separated from the primary application provider. So even like if we talk Microsoft 365, there's certain service levels there where you can add and integrate a backup or archive legal hold function into that. It's still stored under one set of administrative credentials in one account by one provider. It's not separated. So this is where I think we view as a backup and recovery specialist. That's all we're doing. We're not trying to run primary application platforms for people. So we spend all day, every day thinking about all of the complexity, the security issues, the regulatory issues with that second copy of data and how to keep it safe through all the different things that the attackers are are coming up with out there, because they've got product teams that are coming up with new things to cause problems for our data every day as well. So if our primary business was managing people's CRM platforms, and we also had an add-on as a backup, then somebody over in the corner somewhere inside of my company is going to be thinking about backup every once in a while. But that's not the case with us at CyberFortress.
Right, and I understand that you guys actually will practice full-blown data center recoveries as part of your service as well, which is
I mean, it's
cool.
and it's football season right now. So I mean, football teams do not go out in a game and run a play they haven't run in practice over and over and over again. Whereas in backup, it's backup and recovery. You'll see all over all of our things. We talk about the recovery. If you haven't tested that recovery, if you don't have a team that's trained in executing that recovery, then in the time of emergency, when you're panicking, that is not the first time you want to be reading the manual on a piece of software to try to get it up and running again.
Or working with the guy in the corner who says, "Oh yeah, I'm also in charge of recovery, and I got to open the playbook up and do that." Right?
Yeah.
All right. I think we could talk for a long time, Bret. I know that you've been in the industry quite some time and have a lot of stories to tell, and we should have you back and talk a little bit more deeply about some of the things that you've learned and some of the best practices you can recommend to people. But I guess as sort of one of the last questions I'd ask, like if someone is sitting out there watching this and going, yeah, I probably haven't covered all the dark corners of my data, what would you recommend they do next? What would be the first step to be in saying, like, I gotta recover, I gotta be able to recover, what should I do?
Yeah, come to cyberfortress.com, talk to one of the recovery people, download some of our guides. We've got a team of recovery people that work on data inventories and recovery plans and executing this stuff for our customers and partners all day, every day around the globe.
All right, so check that out. All right, and I looking over your shoulder there, it starts with an inventory. I think that's pretty cool, right? And people probably don't need to understand where their data is. You mentioned it a couple times. So with that, I thank you, Bret, for coming along today.
Thank you for having me on the program, Mike.
All right, and check it out. There's some offers of some material there. Check out cyberfortress.com if you're looking for a place to get started with some reference and best practice materials. Take care, guys.